This is chapter number 3, ruling the countryside. Countryside means village, gaon, gramin kshetra. So whose shasan or whose administration we are talking about? Britishers or British rule we are talking about. Before we go ahead, I would like to see you this picture. And here you see Shah Alam and here is Robert Clive. So this is Robert Clive accepting the Diwani of Bengal, Bihar and Odisha. And this happened in 1765. So this is a question also in your text. So 1765, company got the Diwani. Please remember 1765, Bengal, Bihar and Odisha. We'll concentrate on Bengal. So there is one line, it is being written here that this Diwani was clearly a great event, because after that things changed in Indian panorama, Indian subcontinent. So this picture, it's being shown that it's just a tent and few people are there. And this happened in Robert Clive's tent, just few Englishmen and just few Indian people as witnesses. So this happened on 12th August 1765. So now Mughal Emperor Shah Alam II is giving or handing over the Diwani or the Chief Financial Administrator rank or post to the East India Company. So whatever Clive did, he had a permanent picture maker that is called a painter, and he would paint everything or every event, good event of his life. So first we need to understand what is Diwani, that is Chief Finance Administrator or administration. Because now the Bengal, Odisha and Bihar, the Diwani is with East India Company, right? Diwani means that if we talk about Bengal specifically, then all the places, all the resources, all revenue producing resources are now under control of company. So whenever I'll talk about company, please understand I'm talking about East India Company. So now, first thing, because this is a wide area, it's not a small place. You still see West Bengal, and previously it was all Bangladesh, etc. So the resources, the sansadhan, whatever is there, which can produce money, which can give revenue, salary, amount, paisa, money. It can be a tax. It can be in terms of revenue. It can be lagan. So all kind of like today we have the income tax, the GST, all these taxes at that time, whichever name you give, all are under the control of East India Company. Now East India Company was expanding. So now when it is expanding, its own expenses they were also expanding. They were incurring quite a lot of expenses. So all these revenues which they were getting or they will get, all these expenses of the company will be covered by the taxes got by Bengal. So here Shah Alam, Robert Clive, his name will come again and again, Robert Clive. Okay. The company was quite smart. It knew that we are an alien power. We are coming from a land which is quite far from India. And this company, in any place, whichever place is there, it would have some Sardar, chieftains. A company cannot go there and provide their authority or impose their valor. Now they took care that these people who are already enjoying the authority and the prestige, that is those people who are the headmen, those people who are being respected, they kept their sanctity. That is how I'll talk about zamindars and later the headman village mukhiya. How did they manage to have mahalwari and rayatwari with them and permanent settlement? We'll talk about that. But you need to understand, they always kept between the village and themselves the people who are important to that place. So we'll see in this discussion how this company colonized the countryside. So we are not talking about the urban area. We are not talking about the presidency area like the the Calcutta or the Madras or the Bengal, Calcutta and Bengal. These Bengal, Mumbai and Chennai. They were the presidencies. But we are talking about the countryside. Countryside means we are talking about Gramin Kshetra, villages, Gaon. Okay, how they organize the different revenue resources, from where they will get money, how they organize, manage them, and then how does this affected the rights of people, because people were having not that much right, but still they were having rights. But how this control, Diwani and company, change their rights or redefine their rights, whether it is for good or bad, we'll see just now. And also, because all these places, Indian places, are quite fertile, so how they imposed, persuaded, or imposed in a powerful manner the crops that the cultivator would grow of their benefits. Please remember, money, money, money. It's all money. Everything is going on money. That is, there are only two things in the world why the people are fighting, why the people are, that is paisa and power, money and the strength. So power and money. Revenue. Revenue is what? Revenue is I. It's the money they were getting or anybody would get. So company, now they have become a diwan, that is the chief finance administration they have. Okay, but still company at this point of time, 1765, they still treated themselves as traders, not more than that, only traders, right? They wanted money from the Diwani they got. They wanted a specific amount of money, right? And they wanted to increase that revenue also, but they were still behaving as traders, only vyapar, as merchants. So now the money which is coming from, that is the land revenue, land tax coming from a place, they were not ready to assess this area. Means they just want only collection. That is, they were not willing to have a proper regularized system of assessing the land, how to collect the revenue of the land. They don't want to do that, right? They have to ultimately do that. But right now, 1765 and onwards, they were not interested at all, right? Because, the only thing they wanted is to buy cotton, silk and spices. This is the only thing they were interested in, because these things have huge market and demand in the European market. So in European market, they would take them and sell them in huge profits. If you see, when they got this Diwani, in 5 years, the cotton, silk, spices they were buying from Indian subcontinent, it doubled in just 5 years after getting their Diwani. So let me talk about just Bengal. This is, as I said, if they would be buying 100, now they were buying 200, say kg or any unit take it in. Before this 1765 or 1865, let me tell you. Okay. So 1865 is very specific. Now before that, now I've come 100 years ahead. So before this, whatever money they have to trade, there is no currency, only gold and silver was there. So they would bring Sona and Chandi, gold and silver, and on the trade of gold and silver, they would take this cotton, silk and spices. But now they have Diwani. So now they don't have to bring this gold and silver. They don't need that, right? So let me tell you that this 1865, I need to change it to 1765 because I'm just going to 1770, right? So we need to change it to 1765. Okay, because this is your NCERT book, it is given 1865, so I referred 1865, but I don't think so. Okay, let us go to Bengal. Now the Bengal economy, because the company was not ready, so the artisans were deserting the village. They were just fleeing. Okay, the artisans were not getting any money. The economy was in deep crisis. And these artisans were forced to sell whatever goods they produce at a very, very low prices. When you force an artisan or a kashtkar to sell the stuff in low amount, how can they survive? And second thing is, for this Kashtkar and the peasants and the farmers, they were forced or imposed a lagan or tax, which they were unable to pay. They can't pay. That is, give 200 lagan, they are only producing 50. How can they pay? So it was incomprehensive. So the artisans, even the peasants, they were not able to pay the dues, the amount, the lagan, right? So that is how the artisanal production, because artisan Bengal is all about art. Okay, we are not just talking about the agriculture. We are talking about cotton. We are talking about silk, spices. All these comes under artisanal production. Okay, so now this declined artistic work or anything which is Kashtkari based, it declined. It was coming from agriculture also. Agriculture cultivation also collapsed. It is given clearly here that agriculture cultivation actually collapsed. Now that was the last nail in the coffin which happened, and this happened in 1770. 1770. So these all situation you just came to know because of the deep crisis of Bengal economy. 1770 there was a great famine, Indian famine, which happened in Bengal. Akal famine. Here no food, no water, nothing. People dying of hunger. 10 million people. 10 million. 1 million is 10 lakh. Okay. So if I say, if you just assume that it is 30 million, 1 million, as I said, 10 lakh people. So 30 million, 10 million people died. 10 million people died. Okay. In 3 crores, 1 crore died. Wiped out. 1/3 of the population. So you can imagine the plight, the situation of Bengal at that time. So this is Murshidabad area. You know that Murshid Quli Khan, he made this as his capital. I've got a very good picture. But these hut cannot remain because Hal was Bihal. Okay. Now this is the picture of the Akal or the famine which happened at that time. They were not having any money, They don't have water, they don't have anything to eat. So people fled, or whosoever remained, they died. Okay, now you understood the situation after getting the Bengal Diwani. These company people, they have to think something because now everything has gone to wane. So I am talking about 3 kind of settlement or the system they organized. These are the land revenue policy that they devised, because they were only thinking about trading before. Now after these all happened in Bengal, they actually doubled their income in 5 years, right? Or income, not income, but the buying capacity. But what about the people? Because if people are not there, how they are going to work? How they are going to go ahead with their Raj administration? So now company officials, they felt that this will not work. We have to invest, we have to take care of land. That is, we have to improve the level of agriculture. We have to do some good work. Otherwise, we will not be able to. What is the faida? What is the profit of getting the Diwani? Okay? Because if you invest, then only you will get the profit. But they were reluctant previously. But now, they took 20 years, that is 20 years of deliberation, company official did, and finally in 1793, Charles Cornwallis, you see here, he introduced a land revenue policy that is called as permanent settlement. Okay, so just all this idea you got. Now because of that, finally they have to come up with certain land revenue policy that is called permanent settlement. Land revenue policy, 3 type of land revenue policy will be there. We'll talk about one by one. First is permanent settlement. This Sthai Bandobasti, permanent settlement. After that, this Mahalwari came and Rayatwari came. So Mahalwari, it was Mackenzie. Rayatwari, it was Thomas Munro. So now these 2 came almost simultaneously, Rayatwari and Mahalwari, but in different places. That is, the problem with the permanent settlement was there And that is how Raitwari came in the southern India part and Mahalwari came in the northern India belt. So these were the system which tried to solve the problems of permanent settlement. So let us see about this permanent settlement first. What was the idea of this? So the permanent settlement was basically in 1793 it was introduced, this policy, this land revenue policy, 1793 permanent settlement. Now the Rajas and the Talukdars, as I told you, the Englishmen, they always kept these in between, means people and the East India Company, they always have some Raja or Talukdars. Those people who are respected, they have prestige, they have their power there. So taluka is a kind of, you can say, a smaller part of a district. Okay, so now this East India Company, they made or recognized this Rajas and Talukdars as the Zamindars. They said, you are Zamindar. Who? Rajas and Talukdars. The big people of that some certain locality, they said, you are now our Zamindar. Okay. So what is the work of Zamindar? The Zamindar has to pay a fixed amount of revenue to the company. That is, the Zamindar will take the Lagan tax from the peasant and farmer and now take this revenue and give it to the company. This is the work of Zamindar. Now the Zamindar, assume he to be Zamindar. Okay. So Zamindar has to give fixed revenue, that is, say this is your area, you have to give us say 500 rupees. I am taking an example, all are examples. So give us 500 rupees. Okay. Now company wanted a regular source of income, fixed source of income, because they are different land and this is for the one land. So different land, they were getting say 500, 500, 500. So they might be getting some say 10,000 rupees, or for example, this is a fixed income they wanted, because till now they just don't want to be getting inside or coming out of the trading fact. Okay. So this 500, maybe Zamindar getting 700, so he may be getting 200 of profit. Okay. So the company was thinking, okay, keep this 200, just give us 500 rupees. That is, you keep the profit, but give us this 500. So the company thought that this 200 which extra Zamindar is getting, he will do some improving in the land. Okay. That is, in order to keep this agriculture to a good level, improvement, this Zamindar will do something. So in permanent settlement, the amount was fixed. Permanent settlement took 20 years to deliberate. And the problem was the Zamindars. See, the problem started here. The Zamindar were not putting any money in order to improve the land. Now what is the problem? The problem was that the Zamindar was not even getting that money, 500 rupees. So he was not able to pay company the fixed amount. How can a Zamindar can improve the land? Okay. So this 500 rupees on the Zamindars which were imposed were too high. For example, 100 rupees were imposed, it would be better. But 500 is too much for them. These all are examples, right? So the amount which revenue has to be given to company, the Zamindar cannot pay. Zamindar were not getting that money. It was huge for them. Okay. So 500, the Zamindar was not able to pay. Sometimes he is getting 200, sometimes he is getting 100. So why he is not getting? So company would do what? He will just remove this person from the Zamindari and the company will nilam it. Okay. Do the auctions. So through auctions, he will give this Zamindari to somebody else. But the revenue cannot extend. The Zamindar cannot be getting money if any Zamindar. Okay. See, just assume that Zamindar is getting some money also, profit. Let's assume. Okay. But the revenue which the company was getting were only 500. That is, if company wants to increase their fixed income from all the land from 10,000 to 15,000, they can't. Because The company has in permanent settlement, the word permanent says that the revenue was fixed. And one more thing, until this zamindar was getting rent from the land, that is, they will give it to the tenants, batai par, to somebody, and if he is getting money like the company was getting, why would zamindar do anything for the land, for the betterment of the land, for betterment of the peasant and farmer? He'll not do anything. So this zamindari system, which we are also calling as sthai bandobasti or permanent settlement, the peasant, zamindar will take money from peasant and it will give it to the British government. So zamindar, the amount was too much, he was not able to pay, and zamindar will force the peasant, and that was the all problem, and the revenue also cannot be changed by the company. Now this cultivator, as I said, the cultivator or the peasants and the farmer, they find this policy very, very oppressive, extremely oppressive, because this is damankari. Why? Because the zamindar is forcing us to give this much of lagan or tax. We are not able to pay the tax. The zamindar, gomashtas and all those zamindar agent would come and they will take the rent, whether the farmer produce or not. Okay. So now the zamindar asking money and the peasant cannot give, so they will go to some money lender, to any person who can give them loan, the mahajan or the money lender. So the peasant will go to them, they will take the money as loan, and when the loan they cannot pay, because eventually farmers cannot pay this land, and finally what they did, the mahajan or these money lender will take their land. So first thing is, the peasant farmer cannot pay rent. Second thing, they are in debt trap because of the money lender money they have taken, and when they took the loan, they will be evicted from the land by this money lender, because money lender will take some collateral, right? So this collateral can be the land. So now they were losing everything. Okay. So here is a difference I have already provided. Now all the problems you understood. These were all the problems. Now, early 19th century, the officials knew that there is a problem in the permanent settlement. There is some or the other situation which are arising. Okay. The revenue system, land revenue policy needs to be changed. The permanent settlement is not working. Right? So now they have to change. See, the company was not interested in what is happening to zamindar or what is happening to the peasant farmer. They just wanted this 10,000 need to be made 20,000. They wanted to increase the amount. They were not interested in others. But permanent settlement, they have fixed the revenue. They will always get 10,000 whatever happens. So now they need to increase it also or decrease it also. So they have to devise new system, and this system is Mahalwari and the Rayatwari. Okay. Now, if you see this land, the upper part of Bengal, which is now mostly Uttar Pradesh. Okay, Bengal presidency I am talking about. So at that time, Bengal, Bombay presidency, and Chennai, that is the Mumbai, Madras presidencies were there. So here in the upper part, the Sanyukt Prant, here a man called Holt Mackenzie. The name is Holt Mackenzie. I am talking about Mahalwari. Whenever you talk about Mahalwari, it's Holt Mackenzie. Now he was here, the upper part of Bengal. So Mahalwari, as I said, this is the upper part, Sanyukta Prant or the United Provinces, which is today called as Uttar Pradesh. Uttar Pradesh was United Provinces earlier. So this Monroe system we'll just talk about, it was in southern India. It was not in northern India. So Holt Mackenzie, he understood that we have to have a new system. So in 1822, Holt Mackenzie introduced a new system. He knew that the village, that is the gram or a gaon, is the basic individual unity, social institution in northern India society. In North India, today's Madhya Pradesh and little bit of Madhya Pradesh, this preservation of the land and the peasant and the farmer is required. Holt Mackenzie understood that. So he said he sent all the district collector. He sent district collector to go to inspect, to measure to measure the land, to measure the field, and also know and understand the custom and rights of the people, different groups, because India, we have different groups, right? Ethnic groups also, and religious and cultural groups. So again, let me tell you, Holt Mackenzie sent district collectors to inspect, measure the land and try to find out custom and rights and estimate the revenue of each plot. And then you calculate this for whole village, Mahal. So this village is called Mahal. That is the combined amount of all the this sea. So whatever land is in village, okay, when you combine this is the amount, this is the revenue a Mahal or a village has to give. So Mahal is not just one gaon, it can be more than one gaon or one land. Okay, so this is Mahalwari system. That is, Mahal means one village or maybe more than one village. It can be more than one village. It can be one village, two village, three village. But this Mahal is a fixed entity, and now this has been inspected and the revenue is being say estimated for a Mahal. Okay, that is why it is called Mahalwari. They have fixed an area and the land revenue also they fixed. That is, they were saying from this Mahal, please give us 1,000. In Bandobasti, it was always 1,000. But Holt Mackenzie said, no, it shouldn't be 1,000. We can increase it to 1,200. We can increase it to 1,500 also. So if some famine and some problem is there, we can reduce it to 800 also. So Mahal, let me tell you, Mahalwari is all about Mahal. Mahal is a village, or it can be a group of village, and that group of village or a village needs to give some money to the company. So combined money of that Mahal has to be given to the and it is not fixed. Bandobasti, Sthai Bandobasti amount was fixed. Here it was not fixed. It can be changed. So it can be revised periodically. This amount can be revised periodically, maybe in month or 3 months. Okay. In the permanent settlement, the person was Zamindar who would give the money he will collect the money and give it to the company. But in Mahalwari system, the village headman, Gaon ka Mukhiya, the headman of the land or the area was given the authority, not the Zamindar. But the Mukhiya was given the authority that now you will collect the revenue and now give us to the company. So this is the Mahalwari settlement Vyavastha. I hope you got the idea, Mahalwari. Okay. So we are in continuity. So let us discuss the Munro system also. Munro system is again an improvement to the permanent settlement. So here you see a handsome man. He's called Thomas Munro. He was the governor of Madras from 1819 to 1826. In Munro system, it's kind of Mahalwari, but it was in southern part of India. So this is the northern part where Mahalwari system was there. In the southern part, this south area, it was basically a Rayatwari system. So a kind of same system, but the places are different. Okay, so the same system of permanent settlement was there in south also. Okay, so we have Rayatwari system. Now how it started? Let me write it, Rayatwari. Rayat is what? First understand what is Rayat. Rayat means a person who cultivates on his land. So a cultivator is called Rayat. Please remember Rayat, and the land on which he cultivates is called Rayati. R-Y-O-T-I. So before Munro, there was a person, he actually started. His name was Captain Alexander Reed. Alexander Reed. Now when the company fought with Tipu Sultan lost the battle in Srirangapatna. And now what the land they got, Alexander Reed, he devised or he started introduced a system which is the Rayatwari system. And now just after that, the Thomas Munro, he actually took this system to whole southern India part. So all southern part, this Rayatwari system was introduced. It was introduced in the Tipu Sultan area, but later it was, expanded. So what they understood is that we don't have zamindars in the south. That is, we have rayats, we have people or the kisan or the peasant farmer who have one land. Okay, they do cultivation in their land. So rather than talking about some zamindar or any in between, let us talk directly with rayats. Let us talk directly with the peasant farmer. In Mahalwari system, what happened? This is the land, and every part is being inspected, and the revenue was estimated. Same thing is done here. Same thing is done here. Each land part is surveyed properly in the Rayat and Rayati system, and the revenue was estimated. There was no headman, there was no zamindar. Okay, and now Rayati or Rayatwari system, they were saying that we are father of these land or the village, and we need to preserve them also. So this was the Rayatwari system. So Rayat or the revenue was directly taken from the peasant farmer who were called Rayati. Rayat or Rayati, their land have. So this is Rayatwari system. Okay. But things were not well. Now this Mahalwari and Rayatwari, it went for some time. It went on for some time. But the revenue they fixed was quite high in this Rayatwari and Mahalwari also. The Rayats were not able to pay the taxes imposed on them. People were fleeing. These new systems, they worked for some time, but they didn't go well. That is how the plight and the distress of the farmer, it increased. Okay, now crops for Europe. Now Britishers, they have realized, they found out that the countryside villages, the Gaon, Gramin Kshetra of Indian subcontinent, they are not only getting revenue, lagan, tax, bhu rajasva, but also these land can be employed to grow the crops, certain crops which are required in Europe, which have high demand in Europe. Okay, because land is also there, fertile land is there, peasants and farmers are there in great numbers, and the temperature, the climatic condition is suitable. So if I take you to late 18th century means around 1770, you can say. No, it's not 1870, it's 1770, right? Now, company was in mood. A company was trying to expand the area of cultivation and the crop, the cultivation of the crops. And these crops were basically two, if we want to name them. And this is opium. Opium means afim. And second one was indigo. Indigo is Neil. Neil. This word is going to come again and again. So this is Neil or indigo. And this is opium, which is afim. Now these were in high demand in Europe. So Britishers, what they did, they persuaded first the farmers and the peasant, behlaya, fuslaya, or if they don't, then force them to cultivate certain special crops of, or you can say cash crop of their usage, which is required by the company so that they can make profit. Marzi ke mutabik. So different places, if I take you all over India, say Bengal, in Bengal, they expanded or they forced production of jute, patsan. In Assam, they created big plantations of tea, chai. And then in United Provinces, now United Provinces, Sanyukta Pradesh is now today's Uttar Pradesh. Here they did this sugar cane, so they expanded this sugar cane. Okay. If you see Muzaffarnagar area, it's all sugar cane. Now, talking about Punjab, it's wheat. Maharashtra, it's cotton because it has black soil, very suitable for production of cotton. And in Punjab and Madras, in Madras rice, cotton in Maharashtra and Punjab. Cotton in Maharashtra and Punjab, rice in Madras. Okay, just changes. So indigo will come again and again. This name you need to see. He is called William Morris. Now this picture which I am showing you is made by, it's not a picture basically, it's actually an embroidery. It's actually a cotton print. So there are two pictures on left. This is a kalamkari print which is created by whom? The weavers, bunkar of Andhra Pradesh, AP of India. So kalamkari print which you see on the left is done by the weavers of Andhra Pradesh. And if you take the right picture, this is actually a floral cotton print designed and produced by whom? By William Morris. The picture I just showed you. Actually, William Morris was a famous poet and he was an artist also from Britain of 19th century. So he did this. This is a Morris cotton print in the late 19th century, Britain, England. Okay, now what is common between these two pictures? William Morris has made, because one was made in England, one was made in Andhra Pradesh. So what is the commonality between these two pictures? So though both the pictures, the bright blue color, they have employed or used the Indian indigo, Bharatiya Neel. So both have used rich blue color called as indigo. So let me tell you about indigo. So let me just take some other color, blue per se, because we are talking about blue color. So indigo, blue color. So this blue color, what you see here in both the pictures, on both they were actually cotton prints. So this indigo comes from a plant which is called as indigo plant, neel ka podha. So the plant is indigo and the blue come from here. Okay, and the Morris possibly have used Indian indigo to produce that art form on the cotton print that we just saw. So Indian subcontinent was the biggest supplier of indigo in the world at that time. Right? Now the question comes, why the demand for indigo of India? Why was it so much required? So there are certain reasons, one by one I am going to take them. First thing is, indigo grows in tropics. Okay, in Europe, the climate condition is temperate, not tropics. So, Ushna Katibandiya Jalvayu is tropics. So, indigo plant grows here. So, I am taking you back, around 600 years back now. 1200, 300, 1300, that is I am talking about 13th century. Okay, 13th century if I take you, at that time, the Indian indigo was used, at that time also, was used in Europe. So it was so popular and it was so good. So Indian indigo was used in Italy, France, Britain, for what? To dye the clothes. Because this indigo is basically a color. So this color, when the cotton is made or the cloth is made, this indigo is used to color them, right? So this was the first liking of any of the European or dyers at that time. But at that time, the amount was very less, because if you see, 13th century, it's long back, at that time, nothing was so sophisticated, right? It's so easy, you take flight now and just go. Previously, ships, on very simple ships that couldn't go that long, some will drown, only few will be able to reach this long distance. So the Neel or the indigo was going from Indian subcontinent to Europe. So the price was very high because it is going long distance through export. It was very, very high priced at that time. But European wanted this, they wanted to color. So now coming to our century, this is a woad plant. So this woad plant is also a substitute of indigo. So it produces violet and blue color, Bangani, Neela. So violet and blue color it produces. Okay. Now the European cloth manufacturer and the dyers who dye the cloth, they were using this woad. And the manufacturers of woad, because as I said, woad was because the temperate climate was very suitable for this woad. Because at this temperate, we cannot have this indigo. So at temperate Shitoshna Katiban, this Jalvayu I am talking about, this climate I am talking about. So this woad could grow. But this woad, what happened? When it comes here, I'll tell you the places first. Northern Italy, okay, then southern France, Germany, Britain. So most of the places, this plant was available. Now those people who are actually manufacturing this color from this woad plant, they found a competition. So they just said, because Indian indigo was classic. It will give you very nice color. Very nice color. It was shiny. It was, rich blue color. But the woad plant gives color which was very pale and dull. It was not that good. Okay. So the Europeans said, no, we just want only this woad plant or woad color. We don't want this. The ban was there. But in 17th century, what happened? The European, they persuaded their government that the ban on the indigo of India should be lifted. So when the ban was lifted, means the import of indigo ban was lifted from Europe, the French began. I'll just give you an example also. So there is a story. Why it happened? What was the reason? So the reason was because if you just think that the indigo was only produced in India, it's not that. All these round circles you see, all these places were producing indigo, and the cheapest was going to Europe. So if I talk about French, now the French also has various colonies like English have. So if I take you to a place called West Indies, and there is a place specifically I will talk about Saint Domingue, we call it Saint Domingue. It is in Caribbean island. This Caribbean island basically West Indies, you can remember it by Gale and Bravo. So this Caribbean island, French began cultivating indigo here, Saint Domingue, in Caribbean island. And Portuguese in Brazil, English in Jamaica, Spanish in Venezuela. So this indigo plantation was coming up everywhere, almost everywhere, North America especially. But the best quality or best import was this Europe was getting from the West Indies, that is Saint Domingue. North America also it was there. It is not that indigo was only, but they have to fulfill the requirement of their place also. So in order to export, this French started doing it in Caribbean island. But when you talk about end of the 18th century, the demand of Indian indigo, Hindustani Neel, it grew. Why? Because it was industrialization in Britain. So the cotton production was has actually exponentially enhanced. So now the cotton was there. Now you need to dye also. So there was a great demand of dyeing the clothes because industrialization. And now they wanted Indian indigo. Now you'll ask the question, why not from West Indies? Why not from America? There was a problem. Now this indigo was not coming from West Indies and America, especially West Indies. So there were some reason. I'll just give you the reason. So, see, 1783 to 1789, all the production which I showed you, these round circles, the production of indigo, if it would have been 100 kg for whole world, it just became 50 kg. That is half. It became half. So the dyers in Britain, they wanted the indigo desperately. So they wanted new sources. And in 13th century, it was already India. India was producing, it was exporting also. Though it was expensive at that time, but now company was already there in our country. So the reason was, I'll tell you what was the reason why it was not coming from West Indies. See here, this is a revolt. So it's a slave revolt in Saint Domingue in August 1791. This is a place of which you find in West Indies, and because at that time slavery was there. Slavery. So the French planters, they were producing indigo and also sugar in the French colonies of Saint Domingue of the Caribbean islands. But African slaves, because they were living in very filthy condition, they were handled very badly, so they rebelled. So it was a rebellion in 1791. They started burning the plantations. They killed the planters. And finally, after in the view of this, 1972, French, they abolished the slavery. Gulami, slave, das, pratha. It was abolished. That is why the indigo plantation, they just collapsed, and the production of indigo, it went almost to zero. I hope you got the idea why it was not coming from this West Indies. That is why plantation, let me tell you that plantation is done in very huge land, not in one biga, 2 biga, 1 hectare. It is in hectares, multiple hectares, 50 biga, 100 biga like this. Okay. So coffee, sugarcane, tobacco, tea, cotton, you'll always see this in plantation. You don't see it in just say 1 biga, 2 biga of land. So now Britain already have a colony in India. So now they can do it. They know how to do it. So because it was rising demand for indigo in Europe, this Britain can do. Britain was already having a colony here. So they tried to look for ways in order to get this indigo from India and promoted indigo cultivation. So if I take you to 18th century and specifically Bengal, the indigo cultivation actually went up to a very high level, exponential you can say. So I'll give you statistics here. The statistics shows that we were dominating. If I take you to 1788, if say 100 kg was coming to Britain, only 30 kg was coming from India. But just in few years, in 1810, almost 95%, that is, if 100 kg was coming, 95 kg was coming from India. It was coming from our land. So this is how you can say an exponential increase, and we were dominating because the quality of Indian indigo was extremely good. So what happened as a result? The East India Company people, the official, they start doing this work. They actually started putting money and they were investing in this indigo plantation and production. Okay. So what they did, this indigo cultivation was so profitable, indigo production was so profitable, they see that most of the officers, they left the job. They left the job of East India Company. They just, bought some plantation and this land, and they started planting this indigo. So this was the basic business at that time, because they were knowing that they were getting huge profit because it is highly demanded in the Western countries. So if you talk about Britain, we are talking about at that time the Scottish and Englishmen. So Scotland, England, and these came to India because they wanted to become planter. They just came here in order to do the indigo plantation. And company was even giving loan to them. So that is why this propagated and enhanced. This is how it happened. Now the next question comes is, how was indigo cultivated? So there are two ways. We'll talk about Nij and Royalty. Coming to how was indigo cultivated. Now we have seen Neil or indigo, Indian indigo. It was very famous. How was it cultivated? Because in Europe, it was in high demand. So wherever it is possible, the Britishers want to cultivate it. They were trying to expand the area. So there are two types of indigo cultivation. First one is Nij. Nij, you can relate it with Niji. Niji means own, self. The second is Royati. In Hindi it's called Rayati. English Royati you can say. So in Nij cultivation, the planter, the person who is doing this cultivation, he will produce this indigo in his own land. Okay? If he is directly controlling it, same control, same man. Okay? That is, he might have bought this land or he might have rented it or leased it from someone. Okay? Rented it or bought. These two things a planter will do. That is called Nij Kheti. Okay? It may be taken from say some zamindar, and now he has hired some laborers, he has employed certain laborers, and these are working. Nij, Niji, self, own. This is how you can remember. This is indigo cultivation, one type of this. We'll talk about Royati, but there was, before that, what was the problem in Nij and why this Royati came? So there was some problem. The first thing is that indigo can only be cultivated in the land which is fertile. That is Ubjau Zameen. If the land is not fertile, it has not that content, soil is not good, indigo cannot be grown. The problem was that the fertile land was already densely populated. That is, people were already living in high numbers. Densely they were there. Even if they get land, these planters, they get small lands scattered here and there. But we are talking about plantation. Plantation by itself means big land. Bade khet. So big land. So plantation is the term used by the big land for. Okay. Now there is one more thing, that the factory of indigo, most of the plantation was done and was supposed to be done near the factory, because indigo cultivation, harvest it and just send it to the factory, it's nearby. So most of the planter want the land which is nearby to the factory, just for the ease of making this indigo. This transportation cost can be reduced. But when they want to evict these people, because peasants were already there, nearby areas, near the factory, so they did forcefully try to evict them, khali karwaya. So now when somebody has land and you forcefully want to evict them, they are living there for years now. So that will lead to certain conflict and tension between the planters and the peasants. So whenever I'm talking about a big land, if big land is there, the mazdoors, the labor is also required in high numbers. For indigo plantation, Nij Kheti, the same time this number of laborers, they were working, they were doing cultivation of their own, that is rice cultivation. Because you can live without indigo, but you cannot live without rice. You have to eat rice, then only you can do Nij Kheti or any other kheti, any cultivation. There is one more thing. Now for big land, plantation, at that time, no tractors were not there and big machines were not there. So the plow, hull, and bullocks, bal, the male cow. Okay. So this hull and bal, plow and bullocks, they are needed for big lands. So this is I'm showing you, this is the hull, that is plow, and this is the bale. So plows and bullocks are required. That is, the measurement unit of land at that time was bigha. Today also it's bigha. It is around 1/3 of hectare. Hectare is 100 by 100 meter. So 1/3 of the hectare was bigha. Now if you assume that for 1 bigha, 2 plows, 2 hull are required to do the cultivation, to prepare the soil, to till the land. Okay. For 1,000, because plantation means 1,000 bighas, 2,000 plows are required. How to get this number of plow and these bullocks? First of all, the planter has to buy them and then to maintain them. It was not possible. It is still a problem. Okay. Now, they can get a supply from peasants. But as we just said, peasants were already doing their rice cultivation at the same time when the cultivation of Nij Kheti or the indigo was going on. So now the plow and bullocks cannot be taken or rented or in any way be retrieved from these peasants who are doing the paddy cultivation PC. Okay. So these are problems, these are situations were there. So the Nij Kheti was only 25%. All the indigo cultivation, only 25% was from the Nij Kheti, Nij cultivation. But the 75% is coming from Rayati system. Rayati system. Okay. Rayat means the person who cultivate, Rayati the land he has. So Rayati system. Okay. Let us see the Rayati also. You need to understand Rayati also. I have given a difference of Nij and Rayati also. If you see on the lower right corner. Let me tell you about Rayati. Now under this system, the planters, they persuaded and forced the Rayats. Who are Rayats? They are Kisan, they are peasant, they are farmers. So the indigo planter, they forced the agreement. That is, the agreement at that time was called as Satta. Satta or Satta. So Satta agreement or a contract agreement between planter and the Rayati, that is the farmer. Sometimes the farmer wouldn't agree. So they will force the headman, the village headman, to sign the contract on the behalf of these Rayats. So they will have agreement with the, if not Rayat, then the headman, village headman. So this is Rayats. Okay, that is why it is called Rayati system. So the contract was, once you are in this contract, now the planter will give some advance money. It is not the free money. It is the money on interest basis. That is, they will give the cash in advance, but there will be a low rate of interest. For example, 100 they are giving 10% interest. So the farmer has to return back 110 rupees, say in month or 3 months or whatever they decide. Now the Kisan or peasant get happy. Oh, we are getting advances. So let's go here. Let's go and do this indigo plantation. They are giving us money. So all of them went for this agreement. That is, the agreement has one more clause, that 25% of the land, whichever Rayati has taken this agreement, 25% minimum he has to grow indigo in his land. If he has 100 bigha, he has to do 25 bigha indigo plantation. And this was also there, that the planter will give seed. He will provide the seed, and along with some machines like drill. Okay, these will be provided by planters. And the cultivator or the Rayati work was that he is going to first prepare the soil, prepare the fields to make it fertile, and sow the seed, sowing the seed of this indigo. And then once this is done, looking after the crop. So all these are the duty of Rayati now. Okay. So this was the contract basically between indigo planter and the Rayati. So if you see a picture, these are the certain workers harvesting indigo, and I'm taking you to early 19th century of Bengal. Now this picture, if you see, this is indigo plant, a factory you can say. So it's a factory So indigo plant, that is the harvested plant, has come here in the factory. So niche cultivation and royalty, I try to give you kind of verses or difference. If you want to have a look, you can just have a look here, but most of the things I have already told you. Okay, let me complete this, then we'll go to the how this kheti was done, cultivation was done, and production was done. So as I was telling, the indigo planter and the peasant or farmer. Now when the harvesting is done, when the paidawar is done, the harvesting, the royals will give back or give the plants to the planters. Okay, so now the indigo planters, when they get this harvested content, they will give again the advances. That is, first of all, the peasant has to return 110, which he has already taken, and now he is eligible for next turn of loan. But the problem was the harvested indigo which they are giving, they are just getting 10 rupees, 20 rupees, 30 rupees, like this, very less. These are all examples. So when they are only getting this much of money, how can they return 110 and now they are eligible for 100 also? They will take 100 also again for a loan. So now they are in a debt trap. They cannot return the money. They cannot return the money, and they are taking money also. Let me again tell you. First of all, the indigo planter was saying you just have to do indigo plantation. Okay. Now indigo podha or indigo plant, the roots are deep inside the land, and once it's deep inside, it will take out all the fertility, all the nutrients from the soil. So once the indigo plantation is done, they cannot do, these farmers, they cannot have rice cultivation here. As I said, rice is for eating, indigo is just for dyeing the clothes. Indigo is not for eating. So the indigo was only done because of profit. Now all these problems, now you understood that there will be some problem, there will be some blue rebellion. Okay, but before that, let me tell you that how this indigo is produced. So how the factory looks, what happens there. So first of all, this picture, if you understand, you will know how it is done. So now here you see vat. Vat is a tank, hod, tank, and just below this we have the second tank, which is below this. You cannot see the hole because the angle is such that. So there is one level above. So now the harvested plant which are brought, the leaves are taken off, and these are put in the fermenting vat. So this is the first tank. Here indigo plant and the pattiyan, that is the leaves, are put here in the hot water, and these are left for fermentation. You can say sadne ke liye. Not sadna, but fermentation basically. Once the fermentation is done, all the bubbles will come. These leaves are taken off. These are taken off. And now the liquid which is left, now this is sent to the lower level of vat. And this is called a beater vat. Now here beating is done for multiple hours, multiple days. Okay. This is done in the lower tank. Right. Once this is done, you see this is a man. It's being shown that he has to work more than 8 hours. He is just beating through this vat beater. And once they are beating, and the water becomes first green and then will become blue. Finally, now they will put some lime water, chune ka pani. Lime water, when they are putting here, the below portion will have the papdi, that is the solid part, and the liquid will be drained off. So there will be a sediment of basically the indigo pulp. So this is how the indigo is formed, and finally it's being sold and wherever it is to be sent. Now let me tell you about Neel Vidroh, Blue Rebellion. So you have known the problems, you have known why this Blue Rebellion came up. or tried to came up because it was being stopped. So everyone was saying, because company wanted profit, they wanted everyone to grow indigo. So in 1859, what happened? Thousands of ryots. I was talking about ryati system, right? So thousands of ryat, specifically I'm talking about Bengal, they said they refused to grow indigo. They said, no, we will not grow indigo. Okay, they have to pay some taxes. They said, and rents. They say, no rents we are giving now. And all these riots, they attacked these indigo factories, and they were heavily armed with swords, spears, bows, arrows. At that time, whatever armaments they get, they just fought with it. Women also, they brought all the home kitchen utensils. They were also fighting. And anyone who is chori chupe, working with the planters, any link with the planters they have, he was socially boycotted. That is, hookah pani band kar dete the. And those agents, at that time, the indigo planter agents were called as gomashtas. These were basically the agents of planters who were actually recruiting these rayat or having actual agreement with the rayats. So when they came to collect rent, they were beaten up. Gomashtas were beaten up. Okay. So these zamindars or these big people have lathials. Lathials means people who have lathi or wooden stick, and they beat people with this. Their only work is the muscle power. So now the ryots, they were not afraid of these lathials. Even the lathials were beaten up by these ryots, because they were in so much distress. These ryots, they were against anyone who is related to indigo. Okay. So 1859, the peasants and farmers, they understood that the local zamindar and the village headman, Mukhia, they are also going to support them, and they are supporting them actually. They have their own reasons, but the peasants were supported in the back by zamindar, because zamindars, what background things they have? First thing is, they were urging the ryots to resist the planter. Why? Because the planter were taking all of the land, so the power of zamindar is coming down. Because indigo planter power was growing, and that zamindar doesn't want. They were unhappy with the increasing power of these planters, because they are getting the planter were getting money also, and they're getting powerful. So that is how they basically instigated the riots. Okay, so they thought, these riots thought that the British, they will support them. Because what happened in 1857, just 2 years back, there was a great revolt, Vidroh, 1857 ka Vidroh, the revolt of 1857. It was a big rebellion, and finally this was controlled 1857. But the British doesn't want that 1859, just after 2 years, one more rebellion should come. One more rebellion, that is called the Blue Rebellion, should come. So what happened? See here, he is Ashley Eden. Now Ashley Eden, all things were happening. Government sent some people to the land, and everyone saw what is the thing. And finally, in Barsat means the rain time, Magistrate Ashley Eden, he actually issued a notice, that is a kind of direction, that riots, the notice or this was very important, this notice was about that the riots cannot be compelled, cannot be pressurized to accept to do the indigo contracts. Previously, it was all without the consent of riots. Okay, sometimes some riots would also agree, but mostly riots were forced. So riots, because of this notice, everyone thought that the Queen Victoria has declared the indigo not to be sown. Okay, everyone was thinking that the British are with them, and Britain and British people were really worried. Okay, and these indigo planters were being beaten up because of the riot. So the government has to call the military, Sena, to call the military to protect these planters, because they were being assaulted for various reasons which I just told you. Finally, British thought, let us stop this, and they set up a commission. Janch Ayog, they set up a commission to inquire what is going on, how the system of indigo production is taking place. Now, commission, when they gave the report, they found that the planters are really guilty. The real victims are the ryots, and they criticize how planters, what are the methods they use to do this cultivation through the ryots. So all this criticism was from commission. Okay, and this work is not at all profitable for ryots, they declared. Okay, but one thing was done. The commission made this decision that okay, today whatever contract you are in, that is the ryots, commission said complete this contract what you have right now, but after that you can always refuse to do the production of indigo. No one will force you, right? Now after this small revolt, this blue rebellion, it was Bengal. So all this indigo production flopped, collapsed because of all the reason I told you. Now planters, because European, they still want this good quality of indigo from India. Okay, and the discovery of synthetic dyes were also going on. Kritrim dye color. So European, they still wanted it. Okay, synthetic dye was going on, business was going on, but still indigo was required. So that is how this in Bengal or wherever this indigo cultivation was affected. Okay, but still they expanded this work in Bihar. So these peasants and farmers in Bihar, they were doing indigo cultivation because of these planters. So one of the planter, peasant, he went to Mahatma Gandhi ji. Mahatma Gandhi has just returned from South Africa, and he said, he persuaded Mahatma Gandhi, please come to Champaran, come here and see the plight and distress and the problems of cultivators. So 1970, this question is always asked. In 1917, it marked the beginning of Champaran movement against the indigo planters. Against whom? The indigo planters. And finally, this Champaran Satyagraha was a success, and this marked the first success of Mahatma Gandhi, and that is how we later on got the independence, because of all these satyagrahas. Now, let me tell you about West Indies. I told you about Saint Domingue. So, indigo was cultivated in various places, not only in India. So, early 18th century French missionary Jean-Baptiste Labarde, he traveled to Caribbean Islands, West Indies. Now, if you see, these are different stages of indigo production in the French slave plantation. So, if you see there, slave worker putting the indigo plant into the settler vat. Another worker is churning the liquid. He has a mechanical churner in a vat. Two workers are carrying this indigo pulp hung up in bag to be dried pulp. They are taking. Two others are mixing their indigo pulp. So all this work is going on, and in the center, if you see, there is a person which is a planter, and he is supervising the slave workers. These are all slaves. Ghulam. Okay. So this is all about this topic. Thank you so much. Take care of yourself.